will be accessible after today from our website. So first, we'll just go over kind of the agenda. I will say today will probably be a pretty quick webinar, not as much in-depth things to cover. But the agenda for today is we'll start with a quick overview of our mission and goals, kind of moving on to this. We'll give an overview of the timeline exercise that we provide in our Constitution today, as well as a suggested time frame for communicating with the schools, faculty, and teachers in your area. We'll wrap it up with any questions and discussion and next steps going forward. So really, I'll go over the mission for those of us that are new or need a reminder. Move to Amend is a coalition of hundreds of organizations and hundreds of thousands of individuals, social and economic justice, ending corporate rule, and building a vibrant democracy that is genuinely accountable to the people and not corporate interests. We have two goals. First is to pass the We the People Amendment to the Constitution to make clear that artificial entities do not have constitutional rights of speech. We have a second tier goal, which is to continue discussion and help support your organizing in your communities about how to make the promise of American democracy real, which, as we know, has never been for the majority of Americans. Maybe familiar, but we'll go ahead and go in a little bit more detail about our principles and values. First, anti-oppression and solidarity organizing. It is crucial to understand the close relationship between structural oppression based on race, class, gender, etc., and the current dire state of our democracy. We must be skillful at building solidarity and trust in order to movement that's strong enough to really win up against corporate rule. Next is coalition and movement building. We're really dedicated to building authentic and trusting relationships with people from groups hardest hit by organizers on the front lines of the struggle against injustice. The third is grassroots organizing. True movement building, we don't feel occurs from the top down, but must start in our communities. We have a dedication to education, as well as political and economic independence. As you know, we're really unique in our constitutional amendment campaign, is that we're unbudging in that we think that it needs two facets. One, that artificial liability companies, unions, nonprofits, and super PACs are not entitled to constitutional rights. As well as the second part, which is money is not free speech. Spending can be regulated and should be, as we've seen from, our recent elections being just flooded with dark money. To a deeper, longer-term agenda, it really goes beyond the 28th Amendment to provide about how best to ensure power for we the people and make real the promise of American democracy and justice. I just want to take a second. We're getting a lot of messages. Am I breaking up? Um, can people hear me? Just kind of read and engage in the messages. I don't want to continue if we're having difficulties. All right, well, I will try to keep my mouthpiece close and hope that this disruption doesn't continue. I'm sorry, we're in the technology battle here. So our strategy is really to, build this grassroots democracy movement, not just to amend the Constitution. For we're a coalition of many organizations, all fighting different fronts to build a broader democracy movement. Seeking democracy is not possible without the inclusion of everyone's voices, and we therefore are dedicated to building a broad, diverse, and multiracial movement. Our goal is to bring power to the people and therefore start our work in the community, planning and envisioning, not just what we do not want. This gives our focus to local organizing and not just target what we don't want. Our target being the American people first, Congress. Though, as a side note, we'll happily say that HJR 48, our We the People Amendment, now has 41 co-sponsors in the House. So to kind of dive into the history and purpose of Constitution Day, Constitution Day is commemorating the formation and signing of the Constitution. So it does occur yearly on or around September 17th, depending on where it falls during the work week. It is actually public law that requires that each education that receives federal funding will hold an educational program around the U.S. Constitution for its students around September 17th. We're finding that this is a great tactic and opportunity for Move to Amend, for our agenda to build a movement for people power. This opportunity provides us opportunities to work with schools, allies, community members, really to explore the limitations of our U.S. Constitution when it was first signed, who is considered a citizen, a legal person. How have the amendments, though passed for the betterment of citizens, historically served the accumulation of wealth and not we the people? How corporate personhood is used as a mechanism for corporations to usurp our constitutional rights and sway our electoral system. How citizenship have been affected by the legal fiction that corporations are human beings. And to really just start conversations about how corporate rule affects our own lives. We'll provide a slew of resources that are all available on our website. This includes a suggested timeline for communicating with the school, which we'll go over at the end, a sample letter to present to educators, administrators, as well as maybe you've had some community involvement in sort of public education. These are not just things that we feel like can be brought into schools, but to the public as well. We have a timeline exercise to present to students. It was based on a more girthy presentation done by Ashley Standards. So this is an adjusted version for high school students as well as college students. We have instructions and tips for presenting. discussion and debrief questions for the students, as well as some follow-up suggestions and materials for ongoing learning. First, before we jump into the purpose and framework of the timeline exercise, I kind of want to emphasize our commitment to that two-tiered goal I spoke of earlier. One part, of course, is to amend the Constitution. However, we believe we can't accomplish this without the second part, which is building that democracy movement. We're building this democracy movement of people affected by corporate power, a movement that cuts across issues. Whatever it is that you care about that is affected by corporate power, that would benefit from more democracy. A movement that explicitly recognizes how corporations have created, perpetrated, and exacerbated classism, sexism, and racism to keep us apart and prevent us from forming movements that threaten their power and that have disproportionately harmed so many people. Do not get me wrong, they have harmed all of us, but some of us a little bit less. So sometimes we can't see our solidarity with other people, perhaps those most affected. We have to organize across these lines that would normally divide us to build up our power. A people power of which corporate occupied Congress and corporate occupied country can no longer ignore. So diving in, after emphasizing this, give you a kind of overview of the timeline. The purposes really remain that to examine the role of the U.S. Constitution in defining legal personhood, to understand how the legal definition of personhood shapes our democracy, to examine the implications of corporations having the legal status of a person with constitutional rights, and to make the connection between personhood, law, rights, privileges. This timeline exercise really gives us a chance to re-examine history, the story of power and how power operates, whose story gets told, who decides, and who loses. The timeline explores the story of how corporations got their power and how people have always formed movements to fight the power of the unjust. For if we know the stories of those in power, who do, then we are more equipped to act. Molly Ivins once described that it's possible to read the history of the country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. From this exercise, it is really our intention to better understand those struggles and the importance of being considered a person under the Constitution. It's broken up into 3 timelines. The third of which is optional and takes a little more time for those situations that it does allow. So the first timeline invites us to learn the impact of personhood being granted by law. What was the intention of the Constitution when it was written? Who did it protect? What does it mean to be a legal person? Who has power to grant it? What's so powerful about being a legal person? And what are some of the privileges that being a legal person provides? Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead here. The second timeline invites us to learn the impact of personhood being granted to corporations under law. Gives us, a comparison right there. What could a corporation do with constitutional rights? Do corporations need to be protected from government? Why do corporations want rights? Why did they go through the law? What happens to people's rights when corporations have rights too? What happens to our economy and democracy when corporations have the same rights as people? As I mentioned, there's a third optional timeline that dives deeper, really looking at white privilege and how that radiates into pretty much every facet. of our American life. It's to help people understand why Move to Amend's fight must include a commitment to dismantle racism in order to build a democracy movement and be fully effective. I do recommend for anyone considering to present this or to propose it to teachers in your area to do that they examine the original timeline exercise that was created by Ashley Sanders. The link will be available here, and it's just a really amazing experience. It gives you a whole lot more breadth than the abbreviated one we've done for schools. So this is kind of the suggested timeline that we think is most appropriate and effective in reaching out to community members and teachers, administrators. By mid-July, you'll want to start to reach out to school administrators, principals, curriculum developers, and department heads. You may want to do some research and asking around to determine who is the best person or people to talk to. For college and university, department heads may be the best place to start. Consider the history and political science departments. Going into August, this is the best time to reach out to teachers about 2 weeks before school starts. Conversations you have in July should really help inform these conversations. And then into September, providing the timeline exercise to teachers. Or offering to be a guest presenter. Some people who have done it, went in and trained the teacher before. Some kind of acted as an aid in the presentation, and some teachers just allowed them to come. And we say to the teacher about a week after any kind of a presentation. With that said, I picked up for in a comment, and I'll ask Keon, I guess, to send those if there are any. Geez, well, I'm so sorry about the connection issues. I do hope the recording catches this better. However, we do have all of these resources available and up online under Constitution, or feel free to email me at millie.h@movetoamend.org. There's certainly been many different ways that this was done, and we would really love your feedback on what goes well or what could be better. And then the last reminder really is, please don't forget to fill out the survey. I realize this was a brief one, and that, please contact us at all if you have any questions. info@movetoamend.org, or the office number 318-8040. And our next Take Action webinar is July 5th.
Oh, before we go, there was one question from. Yes, there was a question, Millie, from Jean Lauer about the average length of a presentation for Constitution Day.
We shot for about 90 minutes. but this can be condensed if you choose to not participate. The third timeline. We do provide debrief questions that can be given to the teacher to be conducted in class after this, as to save you time if that is next. Any other questions, Keon?
So Linda Brewster is asking, we were about where we would find the abbreviated version of the presentation that you're talking about. I'm assuming that's on movetomend.org/Constitution Day.
Correct.
Yeah, and I will copy and
Or
paste
just
the.
enter in the search bar on our website, Constitution Day, and you'll see we have Constitution. Keon's going to enter in that link into the toolbar.
Yep, it's entered in there, and so I think that's all the questions that we have. Thank you all for joining us.
If you guys need any help, thank you so much.
Yeah, and if please at the end of this, if you could fill out the survey at the end of this webinar, that will help us improve these presentations and give us important feedback. So please do stick around towards the end and fill out that survey for us and let us know if you'd like us to give you a call. We'd be happy to help with you.